D&D players, if Reddit, what was the funniest story from your games?
Wingardium Leviosa.
Here's one I posted on /Green text. Be Paladin. Bury dead Squire. Take long rest. Squire's hand bursts forth from beneath the grave. Roll for initiative. Bard goes first. Decides to shake zombie's hand. Roll for diplomacy. Total of 23. Zombie hand does thumbs up. Recedes back into the ground. Encounter over.
Wingardium Leviosa.
The boot kept trying to bite the boot again, in whatever form it chose. In addition to this, he continually would scream his battle cry, La and Sauachi. Eventually, we basically killed the shapeshifter and it turned into a puddle. At this point we had to physically restrain the biter from literally leaning down and biting the puddle. We laughed. Really hard. We were going through an abandoned castle, chasing after some kind of monster. We entered into an armory, and found the usual pile of rusted weapons you'd expect to find, and one boot. Not a pair of boots, just one boot. One member of our party declared that he had a good feeling of the boot, and picked it up. The DM uttered the following phrase, "The boot bites you." Roll for initiative. Now, the character who picked up the boot is normally calm and collected, but the guy who was playing him was very good at playing a character, and decided to have this set him over the edge. He replied, "I bite the boot back." What followed was one of the most bizarre and entertaining fights I've ever had. We were all trying to hit this boot with various weapons and spells, and eventually learned it was a shapeshifter, so it turned into some different forms. But throughout this fight, the guy who bit
Wingardium Leviosa
paralyzed itself by getting its neck snapped when it fell into the canyon. Oh, and after the fact the DM told us the creature rolled 3 nat 1s in a row. Had it not, that would have been the end of the campaign for all of us, cause its attack did something like base 15 when we barely had 20 health. Early on in one of my good friend's campaigns we were passing through a forest, to get to the next city when something big passed us, and quickly. The DM warned us with some conviction not to fuck with this thing, so naturally my character, a slime man beast thing with a serious fetish for caving skulls in, rolled to intimidate. 18 on the die. I give a bellow, all the while the DM is adamantly warning us we should tuck tail and run. 2/5 members of the party agreed with the DM, but thankfully it fell on deaf ears. This giant demon dog with horns the size of a skyscraper starts charging us. Oh fuck, I remember us all yelling. Suddenly, as it rearing back to attack us, the thing fucking trips. It falls face first into a canyon that was some 500 yards parallel to the forest, and is stuck. Seeing my opportunity I climb on its back and smash the head to smithereens. Apparently it fell so hard it.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Mine would have to be the time we played with my friend's half-orc character. His character had an intelligence of 8. His character would collect the heads of goblins we killed. His character was very detrimental to the party. But anyway, at the end of the caves we were going through, there was some sort of troll mutated by magical energy to make it more powerful. It was huge and the half-orc did not like the threat. The half-orc picked up all the heads it was carrying, lit all of them on fire, and threw them at the troll. Needless to say, the DM did not know what to have him roll, so he just picked up the nearest fix and used it. It was a D8. He got really high rolls, and we had goblin heads flying across the cave doing 7 to 8 damage and setting the troll on fire. All in all, it was a fun game.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I was DM and my friend was fighting an enemy who was on horseback. He got a lucky roll and managed to kill the guy without killing the horse. He then rolls to ride the horse and, again, rolls high and the horse is his. Only problem is, later on he runs into a set of stairs and the horse can't walk down them, so he'll have to leave it behind. His reply was "fuck that horse," to which I responded, "Do you want to roll for it?" He did. He rolled low and was left standing there, dick in hand as the horse ran away.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Female rogue character, who had failed a few charisma attempts to charm earlier in the evening, opened a door in an old abandoned castle. DM says as the door creaks open you see something horrible and paused for a moment as he reached into his box to pull out some monster, so I jumped in with a mirror. I just thought I was being silly, but the table fell to pieces laughing.
Wingardium Leviosa.
There we were traipsing our way through the dense jungle when our DM makes a random encounter when the halfling barbarian gets hit with a mango, so in retaliation he throws a mango in the direction it came from and gets a natural 20 and kills a poor monkey. As the kind of friends and party we are, we viciously mock him for harming that poor defenseless monkey. Fast forward a couple games and we have a player character drop out and a new one join. She was a fairy druid from that jungle, and the first words she said to us were he had a family and kids, you know, as she lands on the barbarian's shoulder. Now much later we still give him a hard time for it. This is just one of many funny moments from our various games we've played over the years.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Following party was all level 5. They were in a volcano dragon lair place. Our alchemist had a necklace of fireballs. Whenever he takes fire damage, either he or the necklace must pass a reflex save, or all of the stored fireballs explode. He gets first initiative on a red whelp. Gets next to the whelp, and stabs it with his sword. Red whelp's turn. Fire breath. Alchemist fails reflex save. Necklace fails reflex save. Necklace explodes for 78d6 damage. All of the alchemist's bombs explode for an additional 8d6 plus 24 damage. Combined total of 86d6 plus 24 damage. Almost TPK, but the rest of the group was behind a now non-existent stone wall, which absorbed some of the damage. Or, if you're looking for one where I was a player. I was a cleric, I had a donkey. I cast light on the donkey. The bard and I go to a small town, and start the religion of the glowing ass. Ended up having quite a
Wingardium Leviosa.
One of our group got infected with some weird black bark thing. It engulfed his head and gave him dark vision. This was before we ended up heading into the boss dungeon. Upon getting to the dungeon he informs us that he knows the way through, but we have to follow him and hold a torch in each hand. We all tell him that yeah sure, why not? I'm particularly up for it because fuck it, I can breathe fire anyway, who needs a weapon? So we go through and avoid a few traps, then pass a room with a chest in it. Like good adventurers we ask him if it's safe to go in and he says it's not in my visions, but sure. Upon getting in there the door locks and he has another vision. We have to perform a ritual to get out. The first step was to put some of our food in the center of a circle, so we do so. Gems on the wall light up. The next step is to pour a healing potion on the food. I do so.
Wingardium Leviosa.
To join in. We started in a zoo and he spent the entire time violating a giraffe. We were on an island that specified in selling magical goods. One of our players was low on money but really wanted some stuff, I forget what. He decided that he'd trade an item he had for the first thing. He proceeded with the trade-off and then suddenly ran out of the shop. It was then that he let us all know, DM included, that he'd used a low-level spell or cantrip, might have been prestidigitation, to make a fake copy of one of his items. He did it again maybe 10 minutes later. The DM was not happy but allowed it as long as he, or anyone else, lets her in on the plan ahead of time in the future. And then there was a major cop chase. Because he had a great dexterity skill and could jump out of windows and use his immovable rod to his advantage, he escaped. He's not allowed on that island anymore. One other time, during a one-shot, we allowed the brother of one of our members.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Pretty funny scene to do. I was doing a session with a few of my friends. We came across 4 doors on our way to our next quest. Each door had a symbol on it, a sun, a moon, a sword, and a shield. We each had to pick one door to go through. 2 of the doors led to the next trial, while the other 2 led to a monster. I went through the sun door because, well, the sun gives us life, so why would there be something that would kill us on the other side? One of my friends chose the sword door, and my other friend chose the shield door. Of course, they were wrong, and they had to fight this really hard monster. We were all only level 2 time. Meanwhile, while they fought, the DM had me in this glade-like area with a bunch of fairies that forced me to have tea with them. My character was one who hated cute things, so naturally, when my friends finally defeated the monster, I was like, get me out of here. It was a
Wingardium Leviosa.
TL, Doctor of Backstory, my party members are idiots, burned down an airship the DM handed to us on a silver platter, killed a party member in the first session and released a lich. The dead player rolled a new warrior. We hiked to a town to get help on how to defeat the lich, fight a horde of zombies. Night comes, we rest, no one takes watch. Warrior wakes up to zombie puppy chewing her leg. I swing my sword at it. You don't have a sword, you have a warhammer. I swing my warhammer. You smash your hammer down, obliterating the dog's head. Yes. And your leg from the knee down. The warrior spent the next 2 days traveling being hauled on a wagon, with a druid and a cleric fighting to keep her alive. When we got to town she lost the leg and graciously accepted the reduction to her speed and agility in return for not having to roll another damn character.
Wingardium Leviosa.
The thief's house. The bard also finds something, a large wooden statue of a frog on someone's lawn. The bard displays her findings first, quite proudly. She's told that's too big, and the rogue hands over the trinket. The mage says she can shrink the large frog, all she needs is some oil and a flint. The bard did not have high intelligence and believed the mage. TL, DR chaotic idiocy burned down the major town of the campaign. Another time, another party, playing a starter set. Some loot received included a small jade frog that the wizard pocketed without telling the party. Upon arriving in town the DM asks what we want to do, most of us go shopping, but the wizard decides she's going to get the frog appraised. The DM asks her where she goes, she says I don't know, I ask someone. You go up to the first person you see on the street. Yes. Oblivious to how many different ways this could go wrong. Wizard flags down the first person that walks past and asks them what they can tell her about the frog. Just holds it up and goes, what can you tell me about this? The person asks her to hand it over so they can get a better look. DM asks her to roll perception, she rolls low and gets a vague he seems trustworthy. So she hands it over and the DM talks about how the NPC is turning the frog over in his
Wingardium Leviosa.
hands, carefully examining it, while he's also rolling repeatedly behind the screen. The wizard's player is sitting there staring at the DM intently listening to him describe what is going on, while the rest of the party is leaning in staring at the wizard, holding their breath because we know what is coming next and how has she not realized yet. The DM is in the middle of this detailed explanation about what the frog looks like, how much money it's worth. He books it away from you up an alleyway and is gone. The wizard drops her hands on the table and goes, wait, what? Did he just steal my frog? The rest of the party is rolling around on the floor laughing at the absurdity that she didn't see that coming. So she enlists the rest of the party to help her get her frog statue back, no further detail. 2 party members are given leads. The rogue finds the actual jade frog in
Wingardium Leviosa.
About 2 years ago my friend and I decided one night to go to our local comic book shop to learn how to play. I'm pretty good friends with the guy who works there, let's call him R. He let us play with their group, a few I know from anime conventions. There was about 4 other tables of people playing and you can tell these people are extremely serious about this game. My friend and I get pretty slap happy, so we are hooting and hollering as we learn the basics. The game starts with you come across a dead horse. What do you do? Without hesitation my friend and I shout eat it. It was at that moment that everyone in our group knew this game would be the weirdest they had played yet. A couple goblins show up and it gets to my turn and the DM asks what it do. I exclaimed, punch R. They looked at me in shock, saying how we are working together and would advise against it, while chuckling a
Wingardium Leviosa.
playing groups across the room. I secretly believe they were jealous about how much fun we were having. Everyone at the table vowed they would never play a normal game of D&D again. That night birthed my love of D&D and has led to so many fun and stupid adventures. That, I stood by what I said. I then proceeded to roll a 20 and punched R to death. I was shook that I could possibly ever do that, and everyone bursts out laughing. Everyone at the table started getting super into our shenanigans. The game keeps going and R keeps trying to kill me, missing every time, in turn me continuing to punch him to near death. We then come across a lone goblin. My friend and I looked at each other with our telepathic eyes and shouted enslave it. So here we are with this goblin on a leash helping us out through all the goblin camps, and almost dead again are, and nasty food poisoning from the horse. All the people in our group start getting into the ridiculousness that was happening about every 5 seconds while R still continues to try to kill me. It was a super fun time. We were all laughing to the point of tears while getting death glares from the serious
Wingardium Leviosa.
have many, but here is one I have posted before. We had a friend whose character purchased a hamster for a copper piece as a pet. He loved and cherished him until one day we were attacked by wolves. He screamed "Get 'em Heber!" and threw the small hamster at the pack. The first wolf immediately stopped to snap up poor Heber, eating him in one action. Sadness occurred. After the combat, one of the other party members turned to me and said, for the cost of 1 Heber, we negated 1 enemy attack. And promptly purchased 100 hamsters as replacement Herberts because the economical value versus life saving was staggering. When offered an item for 10 gold, another player turned to the group and asked, yeah, but is that really worth 1000 Herberts? And the permanent creation of a new unit of value was born. The Killer Herbert. Shockingly, named exactly as they are used.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Rolled a natural 1 and then a 2. If he had rolled another 1, he would have probably killed the orc. Meanwhile, the rogue, still disguised as a rooster, snuck into another room and found the chickens. His disguise was so good that all the chickens fell immediately in love with him and tried to mate with him. Followed by a flock of 14 chickens, he sprinted to the hallway, only to find one of the scarecrows waiting for them. The entire flock attacked the mimic and managed to beat him to death before he could even attack. I guess true love will always find a way. We were in a little town that asked for our help. One night, all of the chickens and their eggs got stolen and they wanted us to find out who did it. So, naturally, one of our rogues disguised himself as a rooster and hid in the den with some bait chickens and eggs to see who did it. We found out that there were scarecrows who came each night to steal the stuff. We followed the scarecrows into a cave. And this is where it really became funny. We found out the scarecrows were actually mimics who could transform into different objects such as chests, tables, chairs, books, etc. We entered a bedroom and immediately a large wardrobe came running at us. One of our group, an orc, attacked the wardrobe but got stuck inside it. A wizard in our group set the entire wardrobe on fire with a spell, while the orc was still in it. Then our paladin tried to throw a javelin into the chest, but he
Wingardium Leviosa.
I had an 8 feet tall Hodor monk who had to sneak over a fence shorter than he was, and I barely made the climb check. The DM tells me next to roll a stealth check, natural 20. Apparently a guard who was in an outhouse had heard me struggle to climb it, but didn't hear me land on the other side, so he went back to pooping. I decide that I can't leave this guard unsubdued, so I tell the DM that I want to surprise the guard and knock him out. DM has me roll strength check to get through the door. With strength bonus I roll a 19, so the door flies off its hinges and the guard is completely surprised, so the DM gives me 2 attacks unarmed to his sub-dual HP pool with advantage. First roll is another natural 20 and a successful hit roll on the second roll. So the DM describes the scene as, the guard, previously having heard a strange noise but nothing after, returns to relieving himself.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Not long after, the door to his outhouse is wrenched off its hinges and flung backhandedly over the shoulder of a massive giant of a man. The guard stammers with fear in his voice, who goes there? The man-giant steps in close, blotting out the sun and whispers, Hodor. He then delivers an open-palmed hammer strike to the top of the startled guard's helmet, driving him into the toilet. The guard, now securely wedged into the toilet, begins to call out for help when our hero Hodor backhands him across the face, thoroughly discombobulating him. Hodor utters his name one more time before creeping off to complete his task, unnervingly quiet for a man so large.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I had a super racist dwarf, and my friend had a super racist elf. We kept trying to intimidate/harm each other in the first dungeon, but kept failing rolls for intimidation/deception/sleight of hand. So everything we did was basically the opposite of what we tried. The dwarf tried to yell into a room full of enemies from the hallway and push the elf into the room, but ended up letting out a light grunt and putting his hands on the elf's shoulder. The elf tried to throw insults at the dwarf but always fumbled his words to the point where he sounded nervous, etc. etc. 5 sessions later, we left the dungeon feeling awkward, scared, and strangely aroused. If the DM hadn't decided to cancel her campaign, I'm almost certain our characters would have been totally gay for each other.
Wingardium Leviosa.
This is my first campaign, Sunless Citadel. Accidentally bump into Beg much before group is actually prepared to fight, Tabaxi Rogue, Human Druid, Human Fighter, Human Ranger, Elf Wizard, worst wizard of all time but NVM, and me, Elf Rogue. Everyone except Tabaxi is dragged to prison, and just before I get taken out, I remember I A, speak Beg's language, I think Goblin but I'm not too sure. And B, have mimicry. Perfect. Me, in Beg's language and accent, no. Don't arrest me too. I'm a goblin just like you are. Beg, you're an elf. Me, I was adopted. Beg, really? By whom? Me, a very blood-hungry goblin couple. I consider myself a goblin now. Die human scum. The conversation carried on with me describing my hatred for humans/elves and love for goblins for about 10 minutes until the Beg asked what my parents' names were. Keep in mind that I'm very new to D&D and
Wingardium Leviosa.
was ready to leave. TLDR, we buffed our already shredded, huge full orc cleric to the point of becoming the Hulk, and simply unleashed him upon a town of goblins barehanded. They didn't stand a chance. Battle cleric full orc giant got to witness the goblins killing a horse and eating its insides. Initiation starts. Orc cleric rolls last. The party can clearly see the red in his eyes. The first person's turn was used, but instead of attacking they cast a cantrip to cause the orc cleric's eyes to glow bright yellow. The second person decides to buff the orc instead of attacking as well. Everyone else decided to buff the giant full orc battle cleric instead of attacking, as it was beginning to be comical. When the orc cleric's turn came, he cast Bull's strength on himself, doubling his already ludicrous strength. He dropped his hammer. He wouldn't need it. The entire party all synchronously decided not to even move their character or attack, and simply watch from a distance. The DM decided that the cleric was pretty much a wrecking ball, so he decided to even forego the map, since he could simply plow through the wooden walls. Cue the entire party watching in silence as a massive, supercharged Hulk rips through and destroys an entire small town of goblins, bare-handed. He was charging through walls and throwing goblins at each other so hard they were unidentifiable afterwards. In stunned silence, all the party saw and heard were goblin screams, loud roars and collapsing buildings. The occasional goblin would go flying, screaming into the air about 100 feet or so, and then silence once it landed. This went on for about 15 minutes or so in-game. Eventually, the cleric stammered back with a pissed expression, covered head to toe in blood, still huge from the buffs. He quietly sat down with an audience of mice and proceeded to feed them. The party didn't move a muscle, just sat there with a blank expression, patiently waiting for him to signal he. We had a group of mostly combat characters, and one cleric full orc who was huge and shredded, even for an orc. He was very monk-like, and had a routine of praying, meditating and improving himself by lifting weights or learning every day. He didn't speak much, but had a reputation for being very gentle, and more often opting to spare enemies rather than kill them because of his holy-ish nature. He was very fond of small or otherwise harmless animals. In fact, it was his bond. He would spread crumbs around where he knew mice were, feed random critters, that sort of thing. The epitome of gentle giant, always offering healing, and defending his party with intimidation now and again. He was a battle cleric with a large hammer, so NPCs had a tendency to leave him alone. Anyway, our party happened upon a large goblin camp that was a recently converted human town. Our gentle
Wingardium Leviosa.
This is not going to be brief. There's a lot of backstory required. We had a group of all first-time players. We started somewhat generically to get into the groove of the game, and settling into our characters. We were fighting things like goblins and thieves. At one point in time, we encountered a goblin encampment and were trying to get to the source to remove the goblin threat once and for all. We ended up blowing up most of the encampment, killed the rest by hand, and decided to take a prisoner to see if we could use it to lead us to the main goblin source. We tried talking to it, but it only spoke very simple words, so we decided we were going to try to convince it to run back to its kin with a secret bomb strapped to it for shits and giggles. You see, in this campaign, goblins had about half the intelligence of a human, or equal to a small child. This will be important.
Wingardium Leviosa.
A final battle against what we decided was the last goblin town. Our goblin luggage decided to fight with us, rather than against us, but only with the promise that he would be the king of goblins and get to rule over what's left of our eradication. Cue the fun part. Our cleric found out that he could cast enhance ability on our goblin friend, and we had a long conversation as to what happened. We came to the conclusion that since a goblin has half the intelligence of a human, when we doubled his intelligence with the spell, he was very nearly as smart as a regular player for about an hour. This worked to our advantage as we conquered the goblin town and killed nearly every goblin in the area. We then had to decide what to do with our goblin companion since the elves wanted extermination, and our luggage goblin had technically completed what we kidnapped him for in the first place. He was still pining for his kingly position, so we all decided we'd equip him with a knife, a bottle of rum, and send him in alone to take his position as king in the main elven castle and watch him get slain by the guards. We figured we could avoid blame if he managed to kill one of the guards, and we all hated the elves. You know, fun. The cleric cast enhance ability on him and sent him in. The DM decided to handle all the rolls himself with a bunch of D20s behind his screen. He did fairly well at the gate, only took one hit, and slipped inside where we couldn't see him. Better than expected. We thought. Cue the DM roll about 15 die, and he starts maniacally laughing. Our party watched in gleeful horror as our luggage goblin plowed down every single guard on his way to the throne room, convinced some guards to join him, and then slay the king and take his place, only held by the elves he converted. The DM showed us the dice he rolled and every single one had rolled above 17, with the exception of 1 or 2. Decidedly enough to survive, and the die he laughably rolled for kingship was a solid 20. That's when the enhance ability spell ended. And that's the story of how we ended up with an idiot goblin king, at least for a while. He got his wish. TLDR, we used enhance ability on a goblin to double his intelligence, and sent him into the king's castle with a knife and bottle of rum. By chance of the dice, he carved a path to the king's chambers, killed him, and took his place. Later. Fast forward adventuring a bit, and we ended up lugging this goblin around a lot longer than we bargained for. We kept it on a leash and stowed it in an empty barrel one of us had to carry everywhere. We essentially bribed it with booze to keep it from going rogue on us. It became our mascot, of sorts, and even though it was a pain in the ass, stealing food, insulting us, ruining stealth, our party grew fond of our burden. It had become one of the party members, though reluctantly. We ended up getting to a point that the DM wanted to progress things, since we had become accustomed to D&D, so we ended up running errands for the king of the area. We were in elven territory, and in our campaign, elves were basically glorified bleached assholes. Elves hated goblins and would prefer if they were eradicated, so we caught shit often while carrying our luggage around with us. During
Wingardium Leviosa.
A group of friends and I were playing a custom Star Wars campaign. Our group got split and my friend and I, a Wookiee and a Twi'lek respectively, got super fucking bored, so we started giving our characters shit to do, Wookiee yoga and fruit sculpture on some random ass planet as our other companions drug themselves through a drainage ditch. Our GM was very impressed. I miss that game.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Our party was leaving an inn and had to steal a horse from the stable. My druid decides to try brewing dandelion moonshine to get the stable boy drunk and oblivious. The brew succeeds, but the rogue drinks it. Decides to try sneakily lassoing the horse from the rafters. Throw goes wrong and he accidentally lassos the stable hand instead. Rolls perfect dexterity and rides out of town on the stable boy's shoulders while rest of the party follows on horseback. Halfling rogues, man.
Wingardium Leviosa.
One night, this one guy in our group got irritated that the DM was drunk, and started to protest him running the game. They started arguing, and the dude picks up his character sheet and sets it on fire, at which point the DM bellows angrily, "If you don't put that character sheet out, I will punch you in the face." That was probably 6 years ago, and we still all constantly talk about it. Sept dude. He don't come around no more.
Wingardium Leviosa.
More wanted than me. And that's why Turner now hates me. I rolled pirate background. We were playing in an archipelago world. We decided whenever we came to port I would have to roll a d20 for my wanted level. First island after level 5, I roll a 20. I'm literally the worst person that has ever existed in this island. We do our quest, me a half-orc with the most recognizable tattoos and appearance. Eventually we hit an alley and the street is empty. A man riding an owlbear appears with a strike team. They are here for my bounty. We fight. We're about to party wipe when my buddy gets a lucky roll and we grapple the man on the owlbear. I then miraculously stab the owlbear in the ass with a nat 20 and insta-kill it. We then take the bounty hunter, now unconscious, and shove him inside the owlbear's now open rectum so that he suffocated inside while I carve the name of the party member that betrayed us into his skull. The authorities now make him
Wingardium Leviosa.
We had a player that tried fucking with us. Not because of character development, just because he was a dick. We found a turned over wagon with some loot, and he found a vial with red liquid in it. Since he was a character with Arcana proficiency, he knew that it was pretty much liquid fire, like a fantasy Molotov cocktail. But this dude hands it to a halfling in our party, saying it's a health option, rolling a 21 deception. So she had to drink it, burning her insides. He quit playing a few days later, so the only logical thing to do is make him a spy that joined our party to kill us. Take a wild guess how we killed him.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Have many, but here is one I have posted before. We had a friend whose character purchased a hamster for a copper piece as a pet. He loved and cherished him until one day we were attacked by wolves. He screamed "Get 'em Heber!" and threw the small hamster at the pack. The first wolf immediately stopped to snap up poor Heber, eating him in one action. Sadness occurred. After the combat, one of the other party members turned to me and said, for the cost of one Heber, we negated one enemy attack. And promptly purchased 100 hamsters as replacement Herberts because the economical value versus life saving was staggering. When offered an item for 10 gold, another player turned to the group and asked, "Yeah, but is that really worth 1,000 Herberts?" And the permanent creation of a new unit of value was born. The Killer Herbert. Shockingly, named exactly as they are used.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Friend let his cousin DM. Cousin is dragon crazy. Cousin DMs game and has 9 dragons, and 3 goblins. Final dragon is stupidly op, hide cannot be breached. I jump down the gullet of the beast and slay it from within. Roll for luck to not get chomped. Roll nat 20. Roll for dex. To see if I can move enough to swing my sword. Nat 20. Roll for SDR, to see if I can cut the beast innards while bound in its stomach. Roll nat 20. At this point everyone thinks my dice are loaded. Defeat, dragon. Dragon crazy DM demands to see my dice. Rolls ones 3 times in a row.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Think this will do nicely. I climb out of my hole and the other character notices my hole just goes straight down. He asks how we are going to fit a body in my hole and I just shrug and say all you said was to dig a hole. My character figured they were just digging holes to keep busy while the NPC grieved. He had no idea it was to dig for corpse burial. I was playing a halfling, Kenda, rogue. Our group joins up with this cleric or paladin, can't remember what it was, to this farmstead to do something or other. There are some giant rabbits, and we win the fight. We then go into the farmhouse and there's a couple dead bodies inside. The NPC drops to his knees in front of the bodies, and I am just casually walking around stuffing things in my pockets, not to profit, it's just what happens with Kendas. I see a large painted portrait of 3 people. It looks like a younger version of the 2 dead bodies and possibly their child. Oh. Now I understand why the NPC dropped to his knees. I am guided out of the house by another character to let the NPC grieve however he will grieve. I am handed a shovel and told let's dig a couple holes. I agree, and we start digging. After a while the other character brushes off his hands and says
Wingardium Leviosa.
Critically glitched, complete failure, while driving the car and seized the front axle, causing a sudden grinding stop and dealing stun damage to all aboard. They ditch their proud chariot, and proceed to the target. After completing the job, the proud criminals return to the vehicle as the wheelman has to somehow return it to his buddy. He rolls poorly, again, and in their absence the thing has been broken into. Somebody smashed the window and tried to hotwire it. When it wouldn't budge due to the axle, they crudely spray painted, in the schoolboy artistic style, breasticles onto the anime girl. He somehow managed to call up and convince his buddy and get a tow. I'll miss that car. I think their next unlucky vehicle might be a Pedovan with a schoolgirl decal strategically placed over the gas tank, faux tiger print seats, and a mirror ball. Ming Shadowrun, not D&D, but still. Typically more Ocean's 11 than LOTR. The team had no wheels and needed a ride. So the tank/wheelman calls up his mechanic buddy and asks a favor. He glitches the roll, which means he was successful, but something also goes wrong. Cue the hentai wagon. The team emerges from the club to find their wheelman proudly standing by this monstrosity, a vintage, petrol-fueled, manual transmission Ford America with a scantily clad anime girl decal on the hood and the phase samurai on the streets, senpai in the sheets stenciled on the rear window. The paint job is faded and one of the doors is mismatched with a different colored replacement. This thing was a cruising eyesore, inconspicuous as a train wreck, and rolling probable cause. They then proceeded to their destination in this proud example of fine American engineering. Along the way someone.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Not technically D&D, but I was contracted to perform surgery on a powerful political figure, something simple. Somehow failed despite having a maxed Inca skill, and ended up killing him. Proceeded to make a machine to control his corpse and tell the populace he was passing his political power to my character, who then became a tyrant. Oops.
Wingardium Leviosa.
One of my friend's characters believes in a maze god. In every encounter he sprinkles corn everywhere. One he saw an attractive elf, he said, "Sup," and sprinkled some corn in her drink. He rolled a 20 on charisma, so she was very interested. When he met her father, he shook his hand and corn just starts flying everywhere from his sleeve. He carries corn cobs everywhere he goes, and the DM allows him to sacrifice a cob every long rest to get a random D100 item. So far he got scissors, old bread, a heavy oak road sign and a silly hat.
Wingardium Leviosa.
A legitimate exchange between 12-year-old me and my equally nerdy 12-year-old friends back in the 80s, picture episode 1 of Stranger Things but with more skateboards. You're being attacked by a giant green slime. What's a giant green slime? It's like a giant booger. Oh, okay. I use my Ring of Wishes to wish for a giant finger to pick it. Damn it, Ryan. You're actually 1D and D. Of course he lost the game when he decided to climb into what was obviously a toilet in a wizard's tower and ended up being teleported to the sewers. But at least he got the diamond he put in it back.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We were sleeping in an abandoned house when my friend's character, who has 1 intelligence, is the only one to wake up to a noise heard outside. He then proceeds to run outside naked and scream hockey. His character loved hockey, while running around the house. After circling the house, came back and saw, through a window, one of my other friends being kidnapped and then jumped through the window. Door was still wide open, and hit his head on the table, and passed out. Also, later that game I stole his pet stuffed dog and told him the goblins took him and then gave him it back and said that I killed the goblins and saved his dog. He and I bonded because of that. I now have a tarred best friend.
Wingardium Leviosa.
So we were with our party going back and forth between 2 elven villages as our mission was to reconcile the chiefs of each village so that they don't start a war. Our DM didn't plan that many random encounters, so we always ended up passing just below a nest of weird monkeys. Each time we were like, okay, let's not anger them and try to go through this area as peacefully as possible, which often ended with the bard casting invisibility or me, the wizard, hiding us with illusions or fog. However, just as we completed the mission, and were going back to the first village, we go through this area, and the DM tells us, some other adventurers are down. We heal them up and ask them what happened, and they tell us yeah, there's this magical sword up there, but the monkeys protect it, so we attacked and kinda got our asses kicked. On these words a big ass monkey, the Father Irk, walks in and
Wingardium Leviosa.
the adventurers are like, please help us. Moment of silence around the table as we all knew what our warrior, who was pissed because we could just kill them, would do. Roll for initiative. I go first. I put the monkey to sleep. The adventurers go, yay, thanks. Everyone in the group passes their turn. Here comes the warrior. He just killed the adventurers, all at 5 horsepower or so, yelling. We went through all the trouble of avoiding them each fucking time. We laughed for a god 15 minutes after that.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Session 0, Tavern, no character knows each other yet. The barbarian somehow insults the wizard. The wizard replies by pouring his tankard right into the barbarian's plate. He gets enraged, throws a punch. Max damage plus crit equals wizard down and probably has a concussion. Nearby knight gets up, trying to take the barbarian in for custody or something. Barbarian challenges him to a duel. Knight agrees. They step outside. Barbarian crits. Knight is bleeding on the ground. The nearby ranger facebombs and carries both the armored knight and the wizard to the town healer. They all get to know each other at the healer, so, Session 0 success. I was the DM, and admittedly had spent most of my time giggling. Fast forward many sessions, the barb and the wiz are good friends, standing by a dead dragon and trying to figure out the best way to drag the corpse back to the town.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My best friend on our character making session conversing with my brother, the DM, brother, do you know what you wanna be? Friend, a sock. Brother, ha ha ha, nice. So what do you actually wanna be? Friend, dash, a sock. Friend proceeds to submit a backstory on how he was a dragonborn fighter who was turned into a sock via someone, the party wizard, who had wild magic go off during their own backstory. Amusingly enough, he'd read the wizard's backstory and wove it in perfectly to where he was transformed into a humanoid sock that can move around. DM decides fuck it, I'll let him have his fun, and he has all the same stats as a dragonborn with the exception we can put things inside him because he's a sock. The DM then took it a step further and had an evil sorcerer offer our fighter the chance to get his body back if he turned on us and tried to kill us. Having previously said
Wingardium Leviosa.
that was his character's main goal in life, he did indeed turn on us.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Knight to pee. He heads to the toilet, meets an assassin sent to kill the party, and is promptly murdered. Next session, new character, a not club-footed squire. We run into some bandits on the road, first arrow fired hits him in the head and kills him instantly. 2 or 3 sessions later, with a new character, a more formidable warrior with heavy armor. We get attacked by horse archers while traveling through a desert, so no armor or he'd die of heat stroke. He decides it would take too long to don all of his armor, so he just puts on his breastplate and charges out of our camp and is immediately killed. I'd like to note that apart from the assassin bit, all of this is just a result of the system, and bad luck, rather than an evil GM. Just a non-fudging one, as he made all rolls openly. Not D&D but a Swedish role-playing system called Ian, don't play it, it's terrible 90% of the time. One of our players was pretty unlucky in a campaign. His first character was to be a squire to my knight. In Ian you create your character then roll for a flaw. So he made a pretty standard fighter type and rolled for flaw, Clubfoot. Great. My squire cannot run and walks at half speed. Oh yes, and he wasn't legally allowed to ride. A couple of sessions in and he has done literally nothing in combat because he simply can't get to the enemy, they walk away from him. We're busy investigating a cult in a large city when the holiest day of the year rolls around. The club-footed squire decides to spend the day walking aimlessly through town rather than pray. The gods punish him by making him age. Now in his mid-80s and incontinent, my club-footed squire wakes up in the middle of the
Wingardium Leviosa.
He decides to break down the door. SDR breaks it. Butler comes in upon hearing noise. Sorcerer shoots him with crossbow. Butler falls to floor screaming. No one knows what to do. Lawful good paladin comes back down to find barbarian standing in smashed doorway and Butler with an arrow sticking through his leg. End session. Many laughs. We found the books for D&D and about 1 hour later I was DM. I had zero experience in D&D, and this is still the best/funniest session ever. I print out a story for level 1 party, about hunting down goblins and turning in their left ear for 2 gold. Part sees the flyer paying for goblin ears and says 2 gold. Fuck that. Literally throw papers on the ground. I guess it's improv time. Party consists of human sorcerer, human paladin, and half-orc barbarian. They come upon a mansion. Butler answered the door, says master isn't home but that can wait in the parlor. Paladin sneaks upstairs to search and finds some weapon crates and armor for small creatures. Have him leave so he can't hear what others do. They immediately start searching the room. They find nothing. Barbarian decides to barricade door so Butler can't come in. Have home roll for int. Really low. Ends up on wrong side of door.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Ask him to roll for confidence or courage or some made-up crap before he did anything to them. Of course he rolls a goddamn 20 and everyone around the table falls silent and looks at each other and then at me. I go to my YouTube music playlist and type in Shipping Up to Boston by the Dropkick Murphys and begin to describe this all-out brawl that just occurred because this drunk bard decided to grab the 2 ship owners' heads and crash them into each other. It was awful and great at the same time. I was DMing and my bard took a great liking to constantly going to the town tavern/bars whenever a new city came up. This time my fighter and sorcerer both joined him into the establishment to get a drink with him. There was actually a really crucial set of NPCs in the bar that owned a ship on the dock and each of them had 1/2 of the key to operate the ship. The ship could be used to take them to a destination they needed to get to that was further away, etc. etc. Without telling them or guiding them on to whether these big burly ship owners were important or not or if they had a ship, described them just as 2 men of large stature, tattooed from head to toe, and clearly didn't skip leg or arm day ever, my bard decided he wants to get sloshed and pick a fight with them. I had to pause for the first time because usually they don't derail stuff like this, and I decided just to.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My party was exploring an old estate as one of the first things we ever did at level 1. Our ranger opened up this door to reveal a broom closet. The broom attacked him, and in his arrogance, he opted not to try and move out of the way of the oncoming broom. It nearly killed him. We still remind him of this and it happened 6 months ago.
Wingardium Leviosa.
It was supposed to be a campaign where we save another player's hometown. I led the party and distribute the wealth from the bad guy to the town. Then I decided to make my highly charismatic chaotic lawful cleric some minion. DM told me to roll a percentage dice. I roll a 0, followed by another 0, only natural 100 in my life. I had the entire town as mine, including the other players' parents. I then renamed the town after my deity, and instructed them to build a cathedral.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We built a bar/tavern in Waterdeep named after a dead comrade named Balgrim, left the state for a job. Our cost of running it are minimal as we've had it designed where the privies empty into a large tank that has a constant prestidigitation and enhance water spell on them. You've never had ale until you've gone balls deep.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Lol, we had a gnome mage that did something similar. He had to roll wild magic a few times during a single fight. First time, he sprouted another set of arms and another mouth, starting shooting fire everywhere. Second time cloned himself, still with multiple mouths and arms. Even more fire. Fire everywhere. The last time he rolled wild magic turned all the versions of himself into potted plants. So we went from extra fire, to way more fire, to suddenly surrounded by potted plants of various colors.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My very first game, we nearly got TPK'd because of slime. Not a gelatinous cube, mind you, just regular slime next to a river that we kept slipping into. And we secured ourselves with rope and pitons too, but one by one, we kept slipping, and our ropes kept breaking, and we all got washed downstream until it was just our dragonborn paladin. He just burned it away with his breath weapon.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I was a druid and my friend was a wizard. I turned into a horse and he would turn invisible and perform spells on me. We started a cult called the Colt Cult, and we were able to convince an entire village to join. Dungeon Master rolled like a 17 or 20, they even built us shrines and gave us offerings.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We were playing D&D 4e, and my brother kept doing odd things the entire game believing he was playing chaotic neutral. The whole party did weird things but he took the cake. So the veteran party member opened TV Tropes on his page and showed him the chaotic stupid page to get him to stop. It worked, though usually he's chaotic stupid by accident too. In the same campaign, after he spent 2 hours making a new character, his first action was to take the Staff of Great Power that we had just gotten from killing this cult group with 4 identical staffs, was to break it over his knee. He died hideously. When asked his thought process, his only reply was break the staff over my knee. The veteran party member was not pleased.
Wingardium Leviosa.
This happened yesterday and it's only the second time I have played, so take that with a grain of salt, I suppose. We entered an inn and there was a goblin filling up a bag of stuff. Upon seeing our group, he bolted out the door. I, halfling bard, happened to be by myself outside of the tavern and saw him bolt out. He didn't see me. I had a brilliant idea. I would disguise myself into a goblin and help him out with his bag. I disguised myself and it succeeded, but it didn't work like I planned. I don't speak goblin, and my hand motions didn't convince him to come over to me. So, I ran over to him. Now, my teammates inside the inn see 2 goblins appearing to be running away from them with a giant bag of loot.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I only played D&D a handful of times. One time we were in a cave. The world is based on WoW. We were inside a cave chasing an orc. He shut a big door to lock us out and we couldn't break it. We explored the caves to see if we could find anything. I found a barrel full of black powder. I was like, oh look, we found some gunpowder, and my friends said that I shouldn't know what gunpowder is, and we argued for 10 minutes. We decided to roll for knowledge. I rolled a 4. So we decided to ram the door open. After the session the DM called my friends dumbasses and said it was gunpowder and we were supposed to blow the door open, and how I was right and there are guns and stuff in WoW.
Wingardium Leviosa.
In the middle of nowhere the warlock fails sleight of hand and takes a vial from a trader who is part of a caravan. Just takes it right out of his hand, looks him in the eyes and proceeds to run away into the woods. Guy yells and the guards escorting the trade caravan come up and the rest of the party is like she isn't with us. She then disguises self to look like a guard and comes back. There were only 4 guards for this rather small trading caravan and she pops in from the tree line. The guards are confused and ask who she is. Our game had a checks and banking system, and after fumbling for a name she decides to bribe the guards with checks she's stolen. So she's handing the guards these checks all signed by different people and meant for different people. I found it hilarious.
Hey guys, this is the Rogue YouTuber here. I recently had a big change in my life. I had a baby daughter. Here she is. If you could do me a favor and remember to hit the subscribe button and bang the bell, I'm hoping to really create a YouTube channel that really gets people excited and brings people the best, most interesting content collated from across the internet. I'm saving up to save my little girl to Carnegie Mellon Computer Science Department. So please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.